Firstly, for those of you who haven't been here before, welcome to Spirit Grow. If you have never been to one of my classes, welcome. If you don't know who I am, my name is Menachem Wolf. Besides being the director here on every other day of the week, on Monday nights, I am the teacher of the Transcendental Kabbalah class. Now, the Transcendental Kabbalah class has a very, very precise purpose, and that is to bring ideas that are taught in Kabbalah to the people who want to know more, and to be able to teach it in a way that makes it applicable, particularly in a way that it can lead to personal growth, correction of one's behavior. We could call that tikkun hamidot, correction of one's behavior. And we could really say this is a personal growth class which is taking all its teachings from Kabbalistic sources. So this series is a very, very challenging series because, while yes, it's about anger, regret, and fear. By the way, by the end, I should know what I'm teaching. Although that's what you think it's about, those are just examples of what this series could be about. In fact, I've already started looking at what the next series after this one's going to be, and I think we might throw hate and pain into the mix just while we're at it. And the truth is, it's just more of the same. In fact, life is more of the same. Life is just the same thing over and over again in different scenarios and situations. In fact, our lives are just the same thing over and over again in different scenarios and situations. Our reincarnation is usually with people that we've been here with before, and the things that we're going to be challenged by are generally things that we're challenged by in previous lifetimes. And it's until we stop being challenged or we overcome the challenge that we actually end up stop being reincarnated. But tonight's not about reincarnation. That was just to make sure you knew that we're talking about Kabbalah. So I had to throw the R word in. All right. Okay, so let's really begin. I want to start with a couple one-line preambles, or one-line heading preambles. For those that know, my preambles can go the length of the whole class. Number one, it's important that everyone in this room recognizes that we all struggle. I know that sounds like a noble truth. I guess this might be a universal idea, that we all struggle. That is something that is so important to accept. In fact, I would say one of the largest challenges in people's lives is the inability to accept that our life is a life filled with struggling. Our life is filled with the act of struggle. It is that which often causes so much stress, in that we assume that we're above the struggle, or we assume we are better than the struggle. Then we're presented with the struggle. We don't know how to navigate our way through the struggle, and then we become very agitated by the fact that we are struggling. That's not the same as the Buddhist concept of accepting that we all suffer and struggle. This is a different idea, and I'm going to build on it a little later. But I just want to put down that when we talk about the struggle with anger, when we talk about the struggle of regret, when we talk about our struggle with fear, these are struggles, meaning that some days you're going to be better at managing or overcoming, and some days you're going to be less successful. And the struggle is that. Number two, it's important that we realize that there are problems with anger, fear, and regret. These are things that are problematic. Now, what that means is that we are casting a negative light, a bad light on these things. Okay? So anyone that has come to this series and is intending on throwing some psychology textbook at me that anger is good, hold your textbook, sit on it, because it will help you see my face better. Okay? We're not here to challenge ideas. We're here to present a different school of thought. And I would say that perhaps save every question to do with these things to next week, the week after, and the week after that, because I bet you when I say anger, you hear tomato, and when you say anger, I hear potato. It sounds similar, but they're very, very different. Okay? So when I say anger, it's probably not what you think I'm talking about. When we're going to talk about anger, which is going to be more next week, we're going to look at it on multiple levels. And just a little caveat for anyone that's been here over the past few months, and we have spoken about anger considerably, we're not revisiting it. If you haven't been here and you've just heard me refer to something that we've learnt about together, go check the video out, because we've analyzed anger as a Kabbalistic concept, but we need to talk about anger as a property of our personality. But the one thing that I need everyone to accept in the context of what we're learning tonight and over the next few weeks is that anger, fear, and regret can all be, and I'm going to say anger pretty much outright is, negative, and therefore we're looking to overcome it. We're looking to see, can we rid ourselves of it, but at least to be able to overcome it so that it's something that only exists at most in potential. Now, there are different types of potential. And when I talk about keeping it in the phase of potential, I would like to use an example that is brought a lot in Kabbalah. There are two different forms of potential. The flintstone has the potential to make a big fire, correct? If you strike two flintstones, you'll get a spark. The potential to create the spark is inside the flint. If you smash a flintstone open, what will you not find inside? A little fire, a little cute fire. It doesn't exist. If you soak a flintstone in water for 10 years, take it out and strike it, what will it do? It will create a spark. The potential is there, but the potential that exists within the flintstone is so non-existent that you can't say that it exists. As opposed to the potential that exists inside a coal. A coal has a flame inside. You look at a coal, towards the end of a fire, it's already gone black. There's no flame coming out. However, if you blow on it and you place a little fuel around it, you're going to end up with a big fire. The potential for a coal or the potential for an ember to make a large fire is there. But if you cut the coal up in half while it's hot, what will you discover? You'll discover a little flame in there. You'll see that it's burning red hot inside the coal. So when we talk about the potential, and then you get a log that's on fire. When you're angry, you're a log that's on fire. When the anger is simmering, it's inside like a flame inside a hot coal. It's there. It's just not being exposed. It's not coming out. What we want to do is return anger back to what it is when we have a flintstone with potential, meaning it doesn't actually exist. But if something is done, it could very easily come out. Okay? So if you believe anger is somewhere, is a good thing, and we should be allowing it out and all that because that's what burns the logs up, just realize there is no shortage of wood in this world. You never, ever burn anger up. In fact, what you do is you just keep chopping the Amazon down and keep putting fuel on the fire. That's what happens when you get angry. Good. I got through my two preambles, and it's not even 8 o'clock yet. I think we can say Shehecheyanu. That is the first time for us, and that's good. So everyone who's just joining, I think there's still a few spare seats. We'll pull some chairs out. Everyone will be comfortable. No one should stand. This is tremendous. This is tremendous. And by the way, just while everyone's settling in, let me tell you why this is tremendous. We are in a period of the Jewish calendar between Pesach and Shavuot. And the period between Pesach and Shavuot is called Sfirat HaOmer. And Sfirat HaOmer is a time for self-introspection and correction on a very, very quick level. It's all about quickly identifying every day another aspect of self and correcting it. So to be looking at these sorts of topics together tonight is a really, really good thing. And that's why I'm really happy that everyone's joining us. Okay. So tonight is about coming to other realizations, besides what I've just said. Tonight is also about realizing that we're not defined by anything. So this series is about anger, fear, and regret. We're not defined by anger, fear, or regret. These are things that we can use to express ourselves, but we can't be defined by that. The only thing we are defined by is our nature. The thing to be careful of is not to define your nature by your justifications. So often people say, oh, I did that, it's my nature, which is code for I don't want to help myself. And therefore, if I use the N-word, you will have to come to accept me for the way I am. Because we live in a very egalitarian society where we're not allowed to judge anyone for doing anything. And if someone wants to do something absolutely radical, it is their right. It is their liberty. And who are you to judge? Well, you're right. Who am I to judge? And we've discussed judgment a lot in this class, and the negativity of judgment and the positivity of judgment. Judgment's not a bad thing. It just needs a place and a time. So how do we define what's good and what's bad? Let someone be angry. Is it not? I mean, we live in Australia. If I was giving this class in America, I would be going off my tree right now, explaining why everyone has the divine right according to some wacky amendment. It is their right to be angry. It is their right to express that anger in any way that they feel they can. And if they're from the southern states, they'll do it one way. If they're from the northern states, they'll do it in another way. They'll make TV shows about it. And eventually someone will run for president on the platform with the fundamental right to be angry. And I believe that is going on right now, right? It's good to laugh when you've got a massive ocean between you. I just hope the other guy wins, because one of them has a plane, so he could come hunt me down. Anyway, so it's very important that we not say, oh, I'm defined by my nature, and my nature is defined by my justification, which is really my right to a whole set of excuses to not having to change. And it's very hard. How do you decide if it's a justification or if it's objective thinking? When are we being subjective and when are we being objective? When is what? And you'll say, oh, that person's a wise person. They've lived many years. They can be objective. Or that person's a very smart person. They can be objective. Or that person. You know how many times I've been told I'm objective? Why? Because I give a Monday night Kabbalah class on academic theory. Everything we're doing tonight is academic. I'm not pointing fingers at you. You know I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the people who are sitting around you. You just came for the intellectual stimulus. You know, you know the text. There is a gentleman in this room that made it very clear to me in a recent discussion that none of us are objective with ourselves. And when we come, and that's why I go back to my initial preamble, when we accept that, we start being able to overcome ourselves. So we can't be defined by our nature, and our nature can't be defined by our excuses, which means we need something objective. So how do we define anything as being good or bad? How do we define anything as good or bad? Well, we either have a set of morals which have been encoded, or we have a... hi, David. No, it's a joke. Don't worry. Got front and center. Thank God David has no blackheads. It's going to be an awesome video to watch. So we have codes. We have codes. We have different historical codes. We have legal codes that people choose to live by. And what I would like to use tonight as our code in order to help us understand what is and is not objective, what is and is not acceptable, tonight is not coming from a legal piece of work, because law can define a lot of things, but in context of who I am and whether this is my nature or whether this is my nurture, we're going to be drawing a lot of tonight's content from the writings of Reb Shlomo Zalman of Liadi, the Alter Rebbe as he's called, the Old Rebbe. It's called the Old Rebbe because he is the first of the Lubavitcher Rebbes. So the Lubavitch, or Chabad as it's popularly known, is a Hasidic school of thought. It's also a popular chain of shuls that you can get meals and do all sorts of cool things at, especially if you're lost in Cambodia, Thailand, or in the deep Ukraine. But the truth is, it's not just a popular Airbnb without a pricing system. It's actually a philosophy. And the philosophy is not open up Airbnbs. The philosophy is an idea of the mind can override the heart. That's one principle. Another principle is to connect with the spirituality within everything. And therefore, why don't we set up shop all around the world to try to teach these ideas to as many people as possible? They're worried about food, or they need a hug, or they need this. Give it to them. Give them what they need so that they can then sit down and learn. It's a fantastic method. They've been using it all around the world quite successfully. The Alter Rebbe, the founder of this school of thought within the Hasidic movement, wrote a piece of work called the Tanya. And the Tanya is a very, very beautiful text. Beautiful as in, when you look at a piece of art and it's beautiful, not just for the picture, but for the method, for the depth, for how the artist has been able to convey his or her thinking and feeling into oils on canvas or sculpture or whatever it is. Then you say, oh, this is beautiful. Because not just is it good use of color, it's good use of technique. And the Tanya is a beautiful piece of technique, if I can humbly say so. That's not me being like an Oxford scholar saying, well, this. It's genuinely an incredible piece of work, because what it is a compilation of Kabbalistic ideas that have not been diluted, but have been dissected to the point that everyone can open it and study and understand the ideas of Kabbalah as it relates to understanding who I am and why I am the way I am and what I can do about it. It's not built on popular psychology. It's not built on Talmudic scriptures. It's not built on midrashic stories. It is built on how Kabbalah explains the physical nature of the human being. And so we need to go to that text in order to explore, before we explore fear, regret, and anger, we need to explore who we are, so that when I finish tonight's class, the rest of the series is easy. We just need to explore these concepts of anger and regret. But before we discuss that, let's look at ourselves. And let's make a really, really bold statement. Not yet. Let me build it up. So first part, interestingly, in the book of Tanya is very, very methodical. But it's not methodical like an encyclopedia. It's methodical like there's a teacher in America, a teacher of Tanya, and he gives an excellent example that it's not methodical like an encyclopedia. He says it's methodical like a cookbook, in that you follow the process, you don't follow the alphabet. So when you look at in a cookbook, it tells you the order of what you do in order to get the product that you want. So let's say you're making a lamb roast. I don't know, I'm just trying to appeal to as many people as possible here. And it was also what came to mind. I guess I'm hungry. Let's say you're trying to make a lamb roast. So you won't be told, get a lamb, kill it. You won't be given the full routine. You'll be told, heat up the oven, make sure you've got a big pan. And like halfway through the stages, it introduces you, make sure you've got lamb, make sure you've got rosemary, make sure you've got vinegar, make sure you've got wine, make sure you've got whatever. And then it's going to tell you, turn on the oven. Turn on the oven? I haven't even started with the lamb. Just turn on the oven. Then get the lamb, cover it in all the ingredients. Then let it sit. While it's sitting, start chopping up your garnish. Garnish? I haven't got lamb to garnish yet. But it takes you through the order in order to achieve a finished product. It's not telling you, put your lamb here, put your thyme there, put your rosemary, put the It's not there to paint a picture. It's there to give you a finished lamb. And therefore, it's not, R comes before T, so rosemary followed by thyme. It tells you in order of stages and steps. So the book of Tanya starts off, before it tells us anything about why we are It needs to tell us who we are. Now, I had to do a bit of research for this class, but it wasn't just for the content. I also am going to introduce a comment, an idea, which you're going to say, a beautiful, bless you, a beautiful, beautiful story by the Cherokee Indians in America. Watch, here we go. The Alter Rebbe takes some fundamental teachings that existed for 1,000 years prior to him. The Alter Rebbe lived 250 years ago, whatever. And he says the human, the person, is, yes, we are a sack of blood and bones, and yes, we have consciousness, and yes, we have feelings, but we also have two souls. One soul enters us at the point of birth, called the Nefesh HaBahamis, the animal soul. It is our instinctive self. And then the other is the Nefesh Elokis, which is our higher self. The Nefesh Elokis is something that only enters us at a point of maturity. And we say that's around the time of a girl's bat mitzvah or a boy's bar mitzvah. Around the age of 12 or 13 is when we attain higher awareness, higher consciousness. Which means for the first part of our life, we're running on instinct. We're learning from whatever happens around us. We're discovering how to think, but we haven't got these two very clear methods of informing our position. I'm not going to get into all that now. It's a complex and beautiful. Complex doesn't mean it's too hard. Complex just means it's too long for us to discuss tonight. But we have to understand we've got these two aspects of self. The Nefesh HaBahamis drives us to survive. It drives us to have pleasure. It drives us to live. Without a Nefesh HaBahamis, we'd all be dead. The Nefesh HaBahamis is the part of us that says, you're hungry, well, what do you want to eat? Because eating is a great thing. The Nefesh HaBahamis is the part of us that says, oh, sugar. This is great. So every time you're hungry, you're going to want sugar because these sorts of things get you to keep eating. It's your Nefesh HaBahamis that tells you you're being threatened. Go fight or flight. It is your Nefesh HaBahamis that tells you go on a holiday. It is your Nefesh HaBahamis that tells you go make money. It is your Nefesh HaBahamis that tells you do all sorts of things. All these things are very neutral. But the Nefesh HaBahamis has no barometer of what is right or wrong. It's just driving the human. And it could be the Nefesh HaBahamis that says go kill that person because they're threatening your existence. It is your Nefesh HaBahamis that says go rip that person off. You will end up with more money. And it is the Nefesh HaBahamis that says get yourself to hospital. You've just lost an arm. So it does good and bad. It's neither good nor bad, but it has no conscience. It has no moral standard. It's just an animal. Nefesh, the soul, Bahamit, the animal. The Nefesh Elokit, which gets translated as the godly soul, is our ability to have higher consciousness, to have higher awareness, to have a higher meaning in what is going on right now, to be able to rise above ourselves. We could call that to transcend ourselves. It is the part of us that is able to override all the negative within us. Now, the Nefesh HaBahamis comes from an egocentric side of the universe, and the Nefesh Elokis comes from a space that is higher than that, or broader than that, which is egolessness. There is no sense of self. It is about the higher picture. It is about the reason for existing. So when you have money in your hand, and you're thinking, should I go buy a sandwich, or should I go give that person money, but if I give them money, I won't have money for a sandwich, and you say, what the heck, let that person have the sandwich. You've just had a Nefesh Elokis moment. You've just had a moment of higher consciousness, of where you've been able to discover an incredible moment of significant meaning in this moment. You've discovered why you're there. And you've also sacrificed your own pleasure and desire, which is to eat or even stay alive, in order to allow another person. What's this person ever going to do for you? Nothing. They're a homeless vagabond. They're going to be under another bridge tomorrow. They're of no purpose to you. At least that's how we look at them at first. So why would we do it? Because there's an inner calling to do that. That is from the Nefesh Elokis. So if you've ever experienced these different dichotomies, this dichotomy of different positions where we're more selfish and sometimes more selfless, you now know it's not because you're crazy. It's not because you're schizophrenic. It's not because you're bipolar. It's because there are two yous inside you. And they're constantly vying for control over your consciousness. They're constantly vying for control over your emotion. They're constantly vying for control over you. And that's because both of them see the world in black and white. The Nefesh Bahamis knows. If the Nefesh Elikis gains control over you, if your higher consciousness takes over, if your higher awareness takes over, if your higher spirit takes over you, you're going to sacrifice yourself for someone else. It knows it. This Nefesh is crazy. It's going to get us killed. We're giving sandwiches away by the dozen instead of eating. That's how the Nefesh Bahamis looks at the world. The Nefesh Bahamis also tends to look at everyone else as saying, you're all here to attack me, aren't you? You're all here to take my attention away. You're all here to take my money. What is it that you guys want from me? That's what the Nefesh Bahamis does. It's an animal. It's always concerned, and only if it feels it's got domination in the moment will it be able to rest. The Nefesh it sees the world as black and white. The Nefesh Elikis sees the Nefesh Bahamis and sees something that is very concerned with its existence. If you're concerned by your own existence, that means there's one thing you don't want to be a part of. The masses. You're not interested in being part of the larger picture. I, the Nefesh Elikis, although the Nefesh Elikis never says I, because it's not an individual, as in it doesn't have a sense of individuality, doesn't want to exist in its own right. It wants to be a part of a larger picture. It wants to be a part of the collective. And therefore, it's always willing to give to the collective, whether the collective are people, animals, the planet, the universe, Hashem, the infinite. That's what the Nefesh Elikis does. So the two of them see the world in black and white, and what they're constantly doing is vying for power. And that is how we make decisions. We have voices. As I like to quote, I had a teacher that used to say, anyone that doesn't hear voices in their head is crazy. Anyone that says, I don't hear voices, not me. We all hear voices. We all have impulses. There are rationalizations going on. If not, you're a concern. You're a worry. This person doesn't think. They just do what they do. I'd be very nervous around such a person. Now, you'd say, hang on. If the Nefesh Bahamis comes from the ego of the universe, which is a secondary creation, in that in Kabbalah it describes that all that is negative or all that is egocentric in the world exists not because it comes from the infinite good. It comes because the infinite good willed it to exist. We're not going into why that is tonight. That's not why. Tonight's not about whys. Again, too complex, i.e. too long to go into. The Nefesh Bahamis, the ego is, according to the masters, it's taught as it's like a person that doesn't care about a dog would feed a dog. So I don't care, but I'm going to give the dog a bone. I'm going to give the dog food. So how do you give something that you don't care food? Like this. It's a bit like, have you ever given money to a busker? I'm sorry to be crude, but if you've ever given money to a busker, you'll notice you don't make eye contact and go, good sir, you are doing Coles a wonderful service with this music. I'd just like to give you some money out of gratitude. Nah. What we do, we come out of Coles. I happen to have coins on me today. So the guy or girl is lucky if you make eye contact. It's money to, yeah, whatever. I'm feeling rich today. Okay, there might be a bit of empathy. I might be sterilizing this. But the point is that form of giving is very different to if you're a parent and you are a parent either of a 4-year-old or you remember your days as being a parent of a 4-year-old or you're a grandparent of a 4-year-old because apparently it's even more emotional. And that 4-year-old says, or let's say 6 because that's how it works in our family, is 6. And he or she says, Tati, can I please have tuck shop tomorrow? I really, really want to have tuck shop. And it is a special day tomorrow. It's only $3. Do you have $3 that you could give me? So you pick up the child and you say, of course I'm going to give you $3. You have brought me to tears in that request. So of course I'm going to give you $3. That's an incredible gesture of giving. That's where the Nefesh Elikis comes from. Whereas the busker or the homeless bogan sitting outside Coles with the sign, no food, no drink, no bed, you go, druggy. we know what no means. It means yes, yes, drugs. We already have a whole narrative about this person. They're not even a dog. I think a dog could get more. If it did puppy eyes outside Coles, it'd get more than all these homeless people outside Coles. And that's the point. So now you can understand we can give, and at the same time our giving is so condescending that where's this giving coming from? It just shows that there's a God in this universe. That in my judgment, I can still give. I don't know whether that's Nefesh Elokis, Nefesh Bahamis. I'm too caught up in the moshel, too caught up in the story to know what it is. But the point is we struggle. We struggle. And this struggle is going to manifest in different ways. But the way that Alter Rebbe brings it together is we are a city with two kings inside vying for power. Now, where was the research? I need to say this because it has bothered me for years. And finally, because I bothered to research it, I can rest everyone. Everyone who knows this, raise your hands if you know the famous story of the Cherokee elder who told the story that there are two wolves inside us. And one wolf is good and one wolf is bad. And which wolf will win? The one that you feed. Just raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. Okay, good. So it always bothered me because the Cherokee Indians are from another world. They're from the New World, from America. Everything I'm teaching is from Kabbalah, from Hasidism. It's either from Europe or it's from the Middle East and North Africa. There was no people say, you see, it's a universal truth. All the spiritual systems have this idea. So I decided I need to find out when did the Cherokee start telling this story. And you know what I discovered? 1978. Oh, and by the way, it wasn't a Cherokee Indian, it was Billy Graham. For those of you who don't know who Billy Graham is a Christian pastor. Billy Graham wrote about it in his book that it is a Cherokee story, but the Cherokees don't have this Messiah. They don't have this story. When asked, no one knew about this story. In fact, what they did find out was that this isn't how Indians tell stories. So I can now rest assured that this narrative of two kings inside us, that we have two beasts inside us, I can still feel comfortable that it isn't some new age idea that's been shared around all the popular spiritual systems, and it gives me the ability to keep going with tonight's class. Okay, if there's anything you're going to remember tonight, it's that Billy Graham teaches Hasidism. Okay. Okay. L'havdil. Okay. So, part of what I want to get to tonight. So we've got this battle raging inside us, and it sounds like they're two equal beings. So if I do something bad, it's because a part of me took control. It means my Nefesh Elokis was weak. And if I do something good, it's because at that moment my Nefesh Bahamis was weak. So, I'm just always struggling. I can't be held guilty. So the truth is we are neither. We are a city with both, but we are not either of them. We are the city. There is a third soul inside us. It's called the Nefesh HaSichlis. The Nefesh HaSichlis is the intelligent soul. It is the soul that listens. It is the soul, when we talk about I, who am I? I am not my actions. I am not good. I am not bad. I am I. When we say I, as in I'm thinking, it's not ego. It's not non-ego. It's just an awareness of self going through a motion of listening to the two voices. And that is the Nefesh HaSichlis, trying to weigh up which way to go. So I actually am listening at every point of the day to these two voices. Now, if the Nefesh Elokis, this is what I was talking about before, is so powerful, why isn't it dominant? What is it? The Nefesh Elokis, the godly soul, by its name, means it is a chelik elokah. It is a component of the universe, as impossible as that term is. You can't have a component of the infinite. You can't have a component of infinite, but just go with it. It is. And if it's part of the infinite, why isn't it always trumping? And the answer is that the way things work is that we're sitting in this room right now. And the Baal Shem Tov used to explain this in the Baal Shem Tov's writings. It is explained beautifully. Right now, where are you sitting? You're sitting in the Olam Asiya, in the world of physicality. You also live in the Olam Hayetzira, in the world of formation. You're also in Olam Abriya, in the world of existence. You're also in Olam Atzilus, the world of divine emanation. You're also sitting in Lamaylam Atzilus, higher than space and time. It just depends which dimension you operate on, which state of consciousness you exist in. To one person, it's just a room filled with Homo sapiens. To another person, it's a room filled with highly intelligent individuals. To another person, it's not a room, it's a space. It's not people, it's a collection of souls. And I'm not talking about whether you come from Fitzroy, you talk like this. If you come from Corfu, you talk like that. I'm talking about people that genuinely operate on that level. That when they connect with someone, they shake hands, they feel a zing. They feel connection. When they eat something, they feel compassion. When they hear something, they feel sick. If you are a person that when you hear someone talking bad of another person and it makes you feel sick, how is it that, not how is it that they talk, that's judgmental, but I don't want to hear this negative talk. You're a sensitive person. You're a spiritually refined individual, that you have a natural aversion to things that are non-spiritual. If you're a person that loves it, then you're more coarse. We're all coarse, don't worry. We're all sensitive, don't worry. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. But the Nefesh Elikis, although it is from such an infinite space of all that is good, the way it came into the time-space continuum is it has gone through many filters to the point that it can exist within time and space of my body, and it has no clear mouthpiece. It can't talk to me. Just like your feelings don't talk to you, they are just internal impulses. So we have our consciousness, we have our subconsciousness, and then we have our superconsciousness, our higher consciousness, whatever you want to call it. That all the way, if you keep digging into the recesses of the individual, and you get back all the way back into the deeper impulse of the person, that deeper impulse which didn't exist yesterday but did exist today, that is coming from these souls. And the Nefesh Elikis is able to communicate if the individual chooses to make themselves refined enough to hear the message. It's a bit like if you just stop and listen, you hear the wind, you hear the buzzing, they've always been there, but you have to become more attuned to it because they're softer sounds, they're more constant sounds. You've learned to filter them out. And we've filtered out our Nefesh Elikis because for 12, 13 years, we weren't ever listening for such sounds. And our whole life is to struggle to discover it. Why is this important? So I can now make my bold statement. Remember, we're talking about fear, anger, and regret. I said that we're not allowed to justify our nature. We're not allowed to justify our nature. So when we do something, we can't say, oh, that's my nature. It's my tendency to get angry. I've got a short fuse. I remember when I had to teach in grade 6, it was like a red cloak to a bull. He walks in, I remember his name, I'm not going to say it, because there are enough people in here that maybe someone's related to him, and he walks in and he says, I have a short fuse. Within 3 minutes I was thrown out of the class. It was just like, what are you, baiting me? Like, how could you do that to a student that considers himself the class clown? You can't walk in as a substitute nochal. He walks as a substitute teacher and he says, I have a short fuse. Mate, you're in the wrong classroom. So we can't say, oh, I am like this, therefore you all have to accept me. No, I am like this. I have to question whether I should be like this. The Alter Rebbe introduces us to a concept called Me'ach Shalat Lev, that the mind must rule the heart. Let me tell you a story. There was a chassid, a disciple of the Alter Rebbe. His name was Reb Moshe Meislish. He is a no-name Russian Jew that no one would have ever heard about if Napoleon defeated the Tsar. But because the Tsar defeated Napoleon, Moshe Meislish is recorded in the annals of history. Moshe Meislish was a Hasidic Jew with a beard, and there was a famous split within Russian Jewry as to whether to support Napoleon or to support the Tsar in their Great War. Part of Russian Jewry and European Jewry supported Napoleon because with Napoleon came French liberty and freedom and the right to be able to practice religion. And then there were those that said, but that is a problem because the Jews have lived in an oppressive regime now for hundreds of years. The freedom is too free, the religion will dissipate. And therefore it is better to live in an oppressive regime which holds us closer to our spiritual values than in a free regime in which we will lose our whole identity. Now, philosophically, you can debate that all you want. I don't care for the opinion. That's not, we're having a Kabbalah class. The Alter Rebbe backed the Tsar, despite the fact that he was persecuted by the Tsar at earlier points in his life. He backed the Tsar because he felt that by supporting the Tsar and having the status quo somewhat maintained of where Jews would be forced into would be better for European Jewry at that time. And so he sent a chassid of his, he sent Reb Moshe Meislish to work for Napoleon and spy. Why? Because Moshe Meislish was multilingual. He spoke Russian, he spoke French, he spoke a number of European languages. Napoleon knew that many European Jews supported him, and he was accepted into Napoleon's ranks as a translator, to be able to translate between French and Russian. And he had earned respect as a devout Jew, as an individual, and as a result, he was brought into an inner sanctum. Now, the whole time, whatever he discovered would be relayed back to the Tsar. This is almost a movie, just our hero isn't going to have any girls on his side, and he's got a beard, and anyway, it's probably why we haven't turned it into a movie just yet. There's no angle yet. Reb Moshe was in Napoleon's tent and was brought face to face with the battle plans. And Napoleon turned to him just suddenly and looked at him and said, "You're a Russian spy, aren't you? That's why you've come to work for us." And immediately Napoleon placed his hand on Reb Moshe to detect his pulse and see whether or not Reb Moshe suddenly is betrayed. This is the earliest polygraph we've got. And Napoleon would do this. And Reb Moshe held his cool. He didn't just maintain his external calm, but he was able to maintain his pulse. When he came back to Liozna, when he came back to the Alter Rebbe, and this story was known, came out, he told the story, and he said, "It is only thanks to the Alter Rebbe that I'm still alive." People were expecting to hear some miracle story. He said, because my whole life, as all the disciples and the students back then did, my whole life I've been working on this idea of Me'ech Shalat al-Lev, of the mind must rule the heart. Now, when the Alter Rebbe taught Me'ech Shalat al-Lev, the mind must rule the heart, he wasn't talking about that the mind must control our anatomy, our biology. It wasn't that we should be able to do that. I mean, that's fantastic. This is the sort of stuff Buddhist monks have become famous for. I know, orange is more romantic than black hat. That's why they got it. But when the Alter Rebbe was pushing the mind over the heart, he wasn't talking about the heart physically, because that's such a level of intensity that's unrealistic for the average human being who has to go to work and raise a family, etc. But that the mind should override the symbolic heart, which is our emotions. That our emotions cannot go unchecked. That we can't just express raw emotion if it's inappropriate. I'm feeling angry, Me'ech Shalat al-Lev. The mind, one has to go through the intellectual process. One must use their intelligence to be able to say, is this an appropriate response to what is going on? Is this permitted of me? And if the answer is no, I must not allow myself. And if the answer is yes, then I should proceed in an appropriate course. When the Alter Rebbe says that, what he's saying is that's our nature. Our nature is Me'ech Shalat al-Lev, as in we are able to do it. We just don't like to do it because it's so hard. Now, raise your hand if you think, it's a bit hard. This idea of I'm having an emotional outburst, someone's just annoyed me, or someone's just really robbed me of my dignity, and I'm very upset, I'm fuming, I've lost control, don't start telling... It's like the Facebook meme. No one ever calmed down because someone was yelling at them to calm down, right? And yet, that's what the Alter Rebbe is telling me. I'm about to blow, and this gentleman with a beautiful large white beard, not with a beret, a big white beard, comes and says, calm down, calm down. You say, no, I don't want to. He says, oh, you may not want to. I'm just letting you know you're able to. What would you do to someone who told you you're able to in that moment? You'd deck them. You deck them. Which is probably why the Alter Rebbe wrote it in a book. Here, take the book. Take the book. Now, I'm just going to demonstrate to you that you've all practiced Melech Shalat Lev. I'll give two examples. Between one of these two examples, I think I've covered everyone. You're in a tiff with a loved one. So it's like, oh, I can't believe you did that. How could you say that to people in front of my parents? You know, just the normal husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend stuff. You know, we've all been there. We're all going there. You know, like, oh, so it's something like this. I can't believe it. Every time you ask me if we can go on a holiday, how many times do I have to explain to you we don't have enough money to go on a holiday? And who's at the door? I don't know. Go get it. The door's like, hey, how's it going, Greg? How's it going, Greg? Oh, it's Greg from next door. What's up, Greg? Oh, I just heard a bit of noise. Oh, yeah, we're just having a bit of a, watching the footy. It's so exciting, isn't it? That's example number one. Example number two, if you're a parent and you still have your memory, you're in Malvern Central. No, you're in Coles, because Coles seems to be my go-to. You can tell what sort of life I'm living. Flybys. So, you're in Coles. You've got two kids in the trolley and one running behind you. The other one you lost in aisle 9. I can already see who the ultra-Orthodox people are, because the other people are like, 4 kids. 4 kids. Wow. All with you, huh? How's that Tarago? Anyway, we left the other 10 at my parents' house. So, bit of comic relief. We can make sure everyone's still here. It's just another day in Elstonwick. So you're in aisle 9, and aisle 9, Coles, like all supermarkets, have done their research, not according to how people shop, it's how children nag their parents. So they will often put, I don't know, like bottled water right next to Coke. They'll put healthy crackers right next to Frosties, cereal or whatever. So you're going down the aisle and you're just looking at the tuna, and all of a sudden you hear boxes being loaded into the trolley. And the kid, and you say, no, sweetheart, we're not buying those, putting them back on the shelf. And it's like, oh, come on, I really want. And it's like, no, we're going. And it's like, it's just pulling things off the shelf. I really want it now. And you just turn to that kid and you go, you do one more thing. When we get to that car, young man. Anyway, you get to the car and you let it rip. Like, I am never, ever taking you, ever. You put your seatbelt on right now. And you turn around and you're walking now. You've finished buckling them into their car. You're walking back to the front of your car seat. You're going, oh, you are so finished. And you see a person in the car next to you like, and you're like, I'm never going to. And you just get in the car, you put the keys in the ignition, and you drive off. Now, either some of you are children reliving your past, or your parents that know exactly how I feel when I go to Coles before midnight. That's why I do the midnight shopping, because they're all asleep by then. Now, these are moments of Melech Shalat Lev. These are moments of Melech Shalat Lev. Let's take the two lovers who feel the need to express themselves in the most honest way. Greg comes to the door. Immediately, what happens? Some sort of inhibition kicks in. We are so fast as human beings. We open that door. We've got like cheetah-style instincts at that moment. We see Homo sapien, adult, judgment. I don't want that person to think that I verbally abused my wife or anything. I don't want them to think anything, so I'm just going to zip it. No matter how angry you were, you zipped it. You're in Coles. Your child has driven you nuts. You've bottled it up. You're letting it out. And then as soon as you realize there's a crowd watching, you zip it. So anyone that says, oh, I can't restrain myself, that's rubbish. They're just so comfortable performing on that size stage that they need a bigger stage to feel nervous about. Everyone can practice Melech Shalat Alev, not because it's a discipline that's achievable, but because that is our nature. No one loses control. That is rubbish. What we sometimes do is we give up control. Now, why would we give up control? There are a whole lot of reasons. A whole lot of reasons why we might give up control. And none of them are called justifications. No one can say, oh, I lost control because that person really irritated me. Nah, it's all the same. The reason why we sometimes lose control is because we sometimes think that it's not worth fighting the fight anymore. We sometimes lose control because we've lost perspective of who we are and in what context we live. We sometimes lose control because it's more enjoyable to lose control. So I've experienced anger recently. It's a fantastic thing. And in the anger, as much as I didn't want to be angry, there was a certain fulfillment in telling over the thing that makes you angry to a loved one. Because the loved one will give you compassion and sympathy. And will tell you it's not your fault and blah, 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 blah. All the stuff. And the only way to get that love is through anger. Because if you don't tell it with a legitimate emotion, you're not getting the love. So you almost can enjoy being angry. You can almost enjoy being in a debilitating situation because in that moment, strangely enough, it's beneficial. That benefit is called pleasure. It's a beautiful state of being. Or we get angry because, we lose control in any form because we're so sick of fighting the fight, it seems to never end. We just seem to be bottling it up, bottling it up, bottling it up. It's never getting better. Why bother? Which is really like saying, I've forgotten why I exist. In this moment, I just want to live for myself. And sometimes that comes with a strange justification of, is it all real anyway? Like, does it really matter? And often, who here has ever run a marathon? Nobody? This is the center that promotes health and wellness, and the only people we can attract are the people that give the drinks on the side. That's all. We've got the Gatorade drinkers. So then it's safe, because then I can say, so I've run marathons, because none of you know what to ask me now, right? Was it hard yet? No, I've never run a marathon. But if you talk to people that have done Ironmans, marathons, half marathons, not the quarter marathon people, half marathon is that's the least. Something that has long endurance required. So anyone that's done that knows that when you're a few kilometers in and you're in your early training, it is very hard because you've got another 40 kilometers to go. You're like 16, 17, and the thoughts start going through the mind like, why am I doing this? Oh, it's for cancer. Yeah, but I can rattle tins for cancer. I don't need to do this. And it becomes very hard. And everyone who runs marathons and does Ironmans or any long endurance things will tell you that the number one thing that you need to eliminate are the voices in your head. You get rid of doubt. There is none of that. There is no space for that in the long run. You just keep going, step after step, kilometer after kilometer, whatever it is. And often when we're living a life which is 120 years, such a long time, I'm never allowed to get angry. Seems a bit hard. Seems a bit hard is code for let it go, bro. Just let it rip. Seems a bit hard is a justification. The Alter Rebbe says, Melech Shalat Alev. The mind can rule the heart. In that we can use the power of our Chochmah bin Adas, we can use the power of our mind to govern as to whether or not our emotions are the correct emotions at this moment. And when Reb Moshe Meislich was confronted with Napoleon's hand on his heart, he had to assess very quickly what was going on and not allow fight or flight to kick in, not allow anxiety to kick in, but rather hold his awareness of who am I? I am Moshe Meislich. Who am I? I'm a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. Why am I here? I am here to ensure that Napoleon doesn't succeed. Why is that important? Because I'm doing this for global Jewry. Who instructed me? My master. I am more important than this situation. My work, is more important than this situation. I am not going to be afraid of that individual. Now, that's not just a mantra. You try doing that, you'll be nervous if you're confronted by a 4-foot man with a very long sword. You'll still be nervous. But years of understanding, of disciplining oneself through meditation and bringing oneself on board actually can bring ourselves to a point of where that awareness can override our emotional response. In the beginning, when you do meditation, for anyone that does practice meditation, in the beginning, nothing really happens. Then what you start doing is you can become more aware of things a little quicker. So after the fact, you realize, that was wrong. And then during the thing, you start discovering, I'm feeling it. And then you become quicker and quicker until earlier on, you're already starting to feel slight tingling. You go, anger. I'm going to deal with this now. Now, you say, well, that sounds like contemporary mindfulness stuff. The battle is always going on. And the battle is not just, should I be angry or should I not be angry? It's complex. There are voices in the head that say, get angry. There are support mechanisms for that voice that say, it's not worth not getting angry. There are so many seeds of doubt, and it's such a power play. You know why? Do you know who your biggest challenge in life is? Do you know which weight is impossible to wrestle? Your own. It's actually not impossible. It is possible. It's just the hardest. So there's a person who I've been speaking with about just things that are going on in their life, and he's got something that he really struggles with. It's to do with love. It's very, very deep and very, very hard. And for me, it was a very easy thing to advise him on. It was very easy. But he found it very, very hard. And he asked me, why is it so hard? In all my life, he says, nothing has ever been too hard for me. I've been bankrupt. I have lost loved ones. I have been questioned. My morality, everything has been questioned. I've always risen above it. I have gone through, and this person has lived life, very hard life. So when it comes to this, I'm struggling. So because when it comes to this is the first time you're battling yourself. Until now, you've always had to battle a reputation, a business. These things for you were always smaller than you. But now that it comes to fighting your own self, you are the only one that know your true weak spots. And you are pressing all your own weak spots. That's why you're struggling. And that's why it's going to be really, really hard to overcome. That's what the Alter Rebbe is saying. Your nefesh elikis nefesh bahamis are you. They are me. We know ourselves so well. And therefore we struggle. And therefore we struggle in the times that we are only going to struggle. However, says the Alter Rebbe, in that struggle is going to come a really, really, really painful question, which is, am I interested in rising above myself or not? And more often than not, this is not me putting any negative spin on who we are, but more often than not, we're not interested in rising above ourselves. More often than not, we're more interested in justifying our behavior. More often than not, we're interested in being who we are. Why should I have to change? Why should I have to grow? Why can't they grow? Why can't they change? They did it to me. I'm the good guy, and I have to rise above. I have to rise above. They punched me, and I'm the one that has to do the self-work. Let them do it. Let them get hurt. And if they get hurt by me, well, they deserve it. Am I not entitled to retribution? Am I not entitled to hate? Am I not entitled to anger? And the Alter Rebbe says, you're entitled to whatever you want. I'm just asking you to think about it. I don't want to think about it, because we all know what happens when we start thinking about things. We start cooling down. And no one likes cooling down. We enjoy the passion. We enjoy the emotion. If we start, how often have you been presented with a difficult situation and someone says, well, let's get a pen and paper and let's write up the pros and cons. I don't want pros and cons. I know what I want to do. I was looking for a yes from you, not analysis. Because analysis leads to sometimes paralysis. And in accounting, they talk about analysis paralysis being a bad thing. You analyze too much, the business doesn't go anywhere because you're too busy analyzing anything. But sometimes the intellectual process of thinking can calm the emotion. And the Alter Rebbe is saying, not only can you, but you have the moral obligation to. So if we've taken one thing out of tonight's class, is that our nature is that we actually can override ourselves, as we do when we're arguing with a loved one, as we do when we're yelling at our children, as we do whenever we're making a fool of ourselves and we realize that we're making a fool of ourselves, that we can override it. And there is no situation, says the Alter Rebbe, there is no situation, says the Arizal, there is no situation, writes the Maharal, that you will succumb to because you don't have a choice. Because your response is completely in your hands. Responses aren't given to you. You choose the response. And now that we know this, now that I've labored the point for the last hour, we can begin the series. Now we can do 3 parts on anger, regret, and fear. Because when we talk about that these are problematic, you can't come and say, but I can't control it. What do you mean you can't control it? I've just explained to you that you can. We need to come to accept that we can. And there is no situation that we can't. If you don't, then you're saying you haven't got a nefesh elokis. And trust me, you don't want to say that. Because do you know who doesn't have a nefesh elokis? Do you know who has a nefesh bahamis, only a nefesh bahamis? Animals. So if you want to tell me you're an animal, I'll put you in a zoo. I'll put you in a zoo, no worries. I've seen many creatures on 2 legs walk around zoos. On the wrong side of the cages. So a human, if you want to say, no, I'm part of the human race, well, then you're signing up for something that no animal has signed up for. Self-control, higher consciousness, an awareness of what is going on, and therefore the empowerment to make a decision in the moment. So when we talk about anger and we say anger's too hard, anger's too hard. Not anger is impossible, anger's too hard. Or anger, I don't want to calm down. Kids often say that. So I've got little kids, and I'll tell one of them, you need to calm down. And sometimes they'll be brutally honest, say, I don't want to calm down. As I said earlier, because there's a certain hana, there's a certain taiva, there's a certain tainug, a certain pleasure. What is pleasure? When you get in touch with your own soul. So when you're getting in touch with your anger, you're getting in touch with your nefesh bahamis. You're moving into self-preservation on a soulful level. And therefore there's a pleasure in that. There's a pleasure. The problem is that it's a completely negative pleasure because you're tapping in not to the pleasure of enlightenment, but the pleasure of self-subservience. You are worshipping your own self. And while that feels pleasurable, it's not the way. Who says? We say. Torah says, the Kabbalah has described the detail. The Talmud explains, Jewish law says, one isn't allowed to do certain things, and anger is one of them. And we're going to have to look at what we mean by anger. We'll have to look at what we mean by fear. I didn't say you're not allowed to be fearful, and regret. We need to talk, because the truth is next week I'll tell you that anger's not that bad. Just not the anger that you like, the other anger. The anger that is all about growth. But that anger usually doesn't involve flaring nostrils and yelling at a person. We'll talk about that next week. So what we take out of tonight is Me'ach Shalat Al-Lev. The mind must, because it can, rule the emotion. I want to wish everyone a good night, but I'd like everyone, if you could, if you feel brazen enough to practice that exercise, if you don't already do it, of observing your thoughts, because that's where Me'ach Shalat Al-Lev really begins, and observing our thoughts and feelings. Have a very good night.